Hello everybody, it's Lucy Wolf here, sleep consultant and author of The Baby Sleep Solution and all about the Baby Sleep Solution as well. I hope that you're really well today. I want to speak to you a little bit about sleep regressions, and specifically the regression that you might experience around the 4-month mark with your young child. Now again, it can start a little bit earlier than 4 months and it can start a little bit later than 4 months. And I suppose generally this age group under 6 months is a particularly tricky territory anyway, and of course it would be less tricky if you have potentially been establishing my sleep shaping suggestions from birth. But if you haven't been, and even if you have been, then sometimes the 4-month regression, or sometimes we should call it the progression, you may find that your sleep is worse than ever, and I find that this is not a good time to start to make big level changes outside of the proposals that I'm going to outline with you today. Try not to be overwhelmed by this. You can of course be proactive, you can be preparing the scene, and although it may not feel helpful at the moment, often if you are doing some continued sleep shaping work, then it makes the sleep learning cycle even easier when you go to the 6-month mark. Now lots of you email me thinking that you can't do anything before 6 months with your children's sleep, and there's loads that you can be doing. However, we treat the sleep slightly differently in the underage profile because their sleep is different, and it's immature, and developmentally and emotionally they may not be able for some of the changes that we can then make beyond 6 months. So I continue to remind you that we take your children's sleep in 2 halves, under 6 months and then over 6 months, and both books cover this in good detail. And I suppose, it's about reading it and then applying it to your child's age range, not trying to take the older age range information and applying it to your younger child, because that's really helpful in my opinion. Now, somewhere around 4 months, sleep characteristically, the nature of your child's sleep starts to lock into place now. And sometimes what parents report is that what used to work, because your child's sleep was immature, no longer works, because now the brain has taken over the controls for sleep, so that whatever they associate with going asleep potentially now needs to be repeated each time your child cycles through their natural sleep phases. So this is why you might find that you go from having had relatively decent stretches of sleep, and now you report your baby is waking much more frequently. Now there's much more going on than just the sleep structure adjusting. There's lots of neurodevelopmental dynamics going on as well. We call this a sleep regression, but I feel often that it shouldn't be called that at all, because often you feel that with a regression that if you wait it out, this good sleep will come back around, and often that's not the case. Often we need to make more adjustments to our sleep. And I suppose there is a few things that happen here that your bedtime has been quite late until now, but biologically it's getting earlier, and they may also begin, of course, showing an interest in solid food. They'll learn to be a little bit more separate from you. You may also experience teething and maybe even first sicknesses, and of course you may also be thinking about returning to work. So there's loads going on for everybody involved. So I suppose what I would propose is that now, if you haven't already, introduced my feeding and sleeping age-related balances for your child's age range with precision. Pay attention to the wake time, which ranges between 6 and 7:30 a.m. and always start the day with a feed, an exposure to natural or bright light, depending on what's available to you, and then begin to continue, if you haven't already, following the timings for your daytime sleep, so that you get your child before they become overtired. And for a lot of your children, if they haven't learned already to sleep in the cot, now is the time to just continue to do what you've been doing. So if you're using the buggy, the boob, the bottle to help them get to sleep, then continue that and just see, can you avoid high levels of overtiredness, and encourage daytime sleep in any which way that works for them. Hold them, rock them, roll them, Even if you feel you can no longer really commit to that, now is really not the time to make high level changes, because I feel that they're not in a position to learn that with ease. Now I would now begin to be a little bit more prescriptive with where I see my daytime sleep finishing, so I try and avoid naps after 5. And then I can align that to bedtime. So you don't really want more than 2 hours between your last nap and bedtime. And if you report that your daytime sleep is finishing earlier, then you will need to bring your bedtime forward earlier so that you are avoiding being awake for more than 2 hours. It's really important and positive to create a bedtime routine here in the bedroom that your child is sleeping in. And again, a lot of your children will be still in their co-sleepers and their next to me's, and I suppose now's not the time to change. If you're going to make big level changes probably need to happen post 6 months, because then you will ingrain that change with the further level sleep changes with the stay and support approach. Definitely bring forward your bedtime if you haven't already, so that although you're observing a 2-hour wake period, also be observing a bedtime on the earlier side, so in bed asleep before 7 or even 6 or 6:30, depending on how your child is ending their day where daytime sleep is concerned. Make sure you're creating a dark environment for both bedtime and your naps, even if the naps are on the go or in the buggy or on you. And we need to try and strengthen their sleep ability as much as possible by creating the right environments. And definitely look for support between the co-parents and anybody else that's in your bubble, so that in this time frame you can do your best to get through it. Now again, if you've been using the percentage of wakefulness approach at bedtime, continue to do that, but maybe even see, can you create a slightly bigger difference between your feed and your sleep, so maybe you start to separate them out a little bit more. But really, if you haven't been using the percentage of wakefulness approach until now, it's not a good time. It's better in this 4-month category, between 4 and 6 months, to kind of go with whatever is arising for you and your baby. If they want to feed, of course you're going to feed them all night. If you want to share the bed with you, make an informed decision, make safe and informed decisions there, and then of course get through this so that and start getting ready, so that at 6 months plus you can make the higher level changes where that separation of the feed and sleep can be more concisely made, and also you can begin to start looking at naps in the cot with the same approach, and that your child's body will be more able to stay asleep for longer, deeper and more as well. Loads of information on the different age profiles, and also regressions that arise at lots of different stages and ages. The most important thing about the regressions that occur, at 9 months, at 18 months, at 2 years, is that you try to stay with your typical sleep practices, and also try to avoid overtiredness as much as possible. So that might mean bringing forward bedtime, closing gaps, and being really, really loving in your responses, but also predictable with the responses that you have to your own child as well. So there's loads of information in both of my books, The Baby Sleep Solution and All About the Baby Sleep Solution as well. And my website is sleepmatters.ie. And for any of you who are looking to have individual support, you can contact me on lucy@sleepmatters.ie. I look forward to seeing you here again soon.